Let's understand the 3M strategy by the virtue of the 3M model in its entirety. Okay. Now, some of you might be familiar from Rise 1 and Rise 2. We discussed this in a minuscule fashion, right? Now, we'll use this, how it is used as a strategy, and then you see the key principles that come out of it in terms of an outcome, right? When you put into physical as an outcome while you're executing a change management solution, okay? So we dealt with the fact that you have to first find in which, from an organization point of view, that organization is in which mode, right? Startup mode, growth mode, decline, or a stable and then degrowth mode, okay? So once you kind of put them in the right bracket, the purpose of tip, top, and SOM, right? And for people who don't understand tip, top, and SOM, it is thinking inside the box. That's one box within the strategy layer, which is managed by somebody, right? And we can call the tip monk, if you will, and that's where the 3 M's come in. The second monk is a top, which is thinking outside the box, who looks at the future and look at the final objective and the goals, and based on that suggests the level of changes that are required or the transformation that is needed. And both the tips and the top, I forgot mentioning what tip does. So tip's purpose is to look intrinsically, that is look within and see where they stand with the changes which are need to be brought about for objectively meeting the future ones, which top is going to recommend through. Okay, so between tip and top, they provide their inputs, that is where the current organization stands, what is the future goal. They bring it out with SOM, right, who analyzes it further by understanding is the analysis and the research good enough to take tip and top as their face value, right? So then they add to it because they have a detailed research and analysis team, and along with the relevant kind of tools that they use to suggest, and based on that they tweak each of the two and then suggest the gap analysis, okay, based on their recommendations. Now, based on the gap analysis, there's a plan which is made between the three, right? Because the champion for inside thinking is TIB, outside thinking is top, and SOM is recommending the gap analysis because of those recommended research and analysis. And the plan is collectively made with them to recommend it to the chief change officer, who will then adapt it as per his budgets and these other factors, etc. or not, and then otherwise run with it. Okay, and of course the time zones play an important role. So two factors, right? The time and the goals, two play a very important role, and the chief goal being the relationships around the systems and the environment. We talked about that. We talked about the depletion of resources. We talked about relationships, right? So each of them relate to either a nation or an organization or an individual. So typically in such cases, it's a monetary requirement of changes, right, for whatever reason, so that either bottom line improves or the top line improves. That's one of the goals. Second is the relationship with the environment that they have, and that should have in a pertinent time. So both follow those typical three basic elements and ingredients to suggest the outcomes that they're looking at. And with that objective, SOM works out the entire plan, and they go through the execution process by passing it to the next layer. Okay. Now, once this has happened, right, and you see the growth cycle, the stability, etc. This cycle doesn't end. It's a continuous improvement cycle. So once they've gone through one cycle, that is growth cycle, to a stability cycle, they again look at the churn on a quarterly or a 6 monthly basis, and then see if there's a degrowth, or is there a still, they're stable enough, or whatever is happening, or the world has changed around them, and so on and so forth. If there is a change, then they go about the whole sequence of events again, right? Because now the top is become the TIB, right? And the future outlook where TIB was, now top will start looking at that, okay? And then the cycle repeats itself, right? And the SOM stays in the same situation, but keeps on suggesting what is to be done. So it's a cyclical process followed from startup to the growth mode to stability to degrowth, and then again rising up again. So this is what encompasses and what is done in very simple, clear, easy steps in a 3M model, where each strategy is adopted accordingly. So hence it is called a 3M model, with strategies suggested for each individual activity of TIB, TOB, and SOM. Okay, and it's a repeated cycle, doesn't end, hence it is a model. Clear? So this has been adopted for transformations which are large scale. It can be adopted at smaller scale also, right, with not so much of ingredients going, because depending on the size of the organization, of course. And and the best part is this can also be adopted at individual level. If you create virtual tip, top and SOM in your mind, right? You see yourself within, you wear a tip hat, you see how the world is changing and where you want to be as an objective requirement, because if your resource depletion or your relationship improvements or other factors, then you start wearing a top hat. You become a SOM after that to see if tip and top relate to each other and what is the gap. If the gap between the two exists, and then you have to fill it up, how you fill it up. So you create a roadmap and then you start making your changes accordingly, right? Even at individual level. So that was the simplicity and the universality of the 3M model. Hence, it is very potent and been tried and tested in some of the earlier companies. No, not knowingly but unknowingly. Now it has been classified and copywritten. Clear? So with this, I hope you have a clarity of how this functions, and hence you will be able to use it and adopt it and suggest it to the respective customers or your potential customers in that particular way. Now, with this, we will jump into the governance of how this happens. Okay, a very important factor within change management activity. Okay, with that, I'll see you there.